summer of the year 2007, news made the round of a man who battered his wife and terminated her life in Lagos, Nigeria because of her multiple pregnancies and births. Her first pregnancy resulted in a twin, while the second pregnancy produced triplets. But in the first instance, who planted the semen in the late woman's uterus, those babies were only 10 days old when their father devilishly snuffed out the life of their mother. The children were eventually sent to an orphanage home, deprived of the love and warmth of both parents, since their father surreptitiously took to his heels. You see, there's no perfect human being, and there is no perfect marriage either. The absence of true love and sincere commitment are the main causes of most marital turbulence and divorce cases globally. In this day and time, how many couples express true love and commitment to one another? Lots of married men these days fail to compliment their wives, year in, year out. Researches indicate that most African men are very unromantic. More often than not, they express affection for their spouses only when they are about to have intercourse. They claim it is not an African culture for men to publicly express affection for their spouses. Consequently, lots of African women have become so used to being treated without affection by their husbands or partners. So when they eventually meet men who go all out to shower them with affection, they behave like fish out of water. Sincere love and commitment are invaluable seeds to sow in the garden of your marriage or relationship. Affection is the gate to the aisle of marital stability, while tolerance, forgiveness, sincerity, and commitment are the combination keys that unlocks that gate. Let me tell you a story. A married couple started their lives together several years ago when they virtually had nothing together. And for many years, they toiled, struggled, and weathered many of life's boisterous storms. After over a decade of navigating the waters of difficulties, anxiety, lack, sorrow, and financial coma, the doors of business opportunities began to open up for the husband. Suddenly, the rain of financial abundance started pouring down on him, and financial wealth appeared to be flowing into his life effortlessly from various angles. Meanwhile, during that same period, things were getting worse for his wife in her home-based business. Before long, she found herself in huge financial predicament, which made her life very difficult. Her business gradually disintegrated. She desperately hoped that her husband would be kind and sensitive enough to help her tackle some of her financial obligations and debts. After all, her financial burdens were insignificant in comparison with her husband's regular expenses and investments. She was often very sad, depressed, and afraid, as she had a constant sense of uncertainty. While the wife was scraping by, her husband was busy spending huge sums of money on himself, buying cars, jewelry, designer clothes. Traveling and clubbing took up much of his time. Meanwhile, all that his wife needed to be free from financial turbulence and frequent financial-related embarrassment was just slightly over $5,000. Even though her husband was aware of his wife's dilemma, he was insensitive to her plight and anguish. He was always more concerned about satisfying his personal desires and goals. The wife began to see a side of her husband she never knew, a very self-centered side. When things were tough for them, they were united and did things together with no secret agenda whatsoever. But at this point, her husband could not afford to spend lots of money on himself, shopping and clubbing. But she was lucky to get a few $100s to cater to some of her needs. Yes, the husband bought her gifts from time to time and gave her money once in a while, but he didn't do some simple things that he would have done to have made her life better and free from financial burdens, which he could easily afford. His wife eventually lost her credit worthiness, and before long, no company will extend her credit. She ultimately ended up with a bad credit at a time that her husband had become very rich. While she struggled, his daily task seemed to be the search of what to spend money on. Her husband was cruelly blind to her needs, seeing only his goals, his dreams, his desires, and all that he wanted to achieve for himself. And any time they got intimate, he would passionately profess his undying love for his wife. Such hypocritical affection tormented her profoundly, and her bitterness intensified. Her ordeal or happiness seemed to mean little or nothing to him. His expression of affection for his wife always grieved her because she realized that there was no sincerity in it. He was so self-centered, mean and insincere. What kind of love is that? There are various incidences that transpire in many marriages that one can impishly refer to as comedy skits. If you hear about the drama that takes place in many marriages, you will wonder why some couples ever decided to get together in the first place. Usually, the issue of finance is one catalyst that time and again triggers marital turbulence. Many married couples live like cat and mouse in their homes as a result of insincerity, as well as the vacuum created due to their inability to manage financial matters. We have observed from several marriages that when things seem to be going well, marriages appear to blossom. But when the wind of financial difficulties blow, then you'll hear statements like, "Please, I'm not cut out for this kind of life. Better sort out your problems and keep me out of there." In one situation, a man lost his job, but before then, he had a happy home. Everything his wife wanted, he wholeheartedly made effort to provide for her. He regularly showered her with gifts and money. His priority was to provide comfort for his wife and children. The couple was noted for their frequent celebrations and annual vacations abroad. But alas, when he unexpectedly lost his job, his life seemed to suddenly crumble like a pack of cards. He delved into businesses, but got his fingers severely burned as he was swindled by fraudsters who had promised to make him very rich if he invested good sums of money to procure chemicals that will enable them to print enormous quantities of major currencies in the world. Most of the monies invested in these swindlers came from unsecured loans that he had obtained from his bankers and former colleagues. The pressure became unbearable when several creditors demanded their principal loan sums as well as interest elements thereof. His bills kept piling up and their world seemed to crumble. He had to sell almost everything he had that was sellable to pay off some of his debts. Then one day, all hell broke loose. His wife declared that she had had enough of his problems. She exploded in rage, spitting out toxic words and insults about how frivolous and undisciplined her husband had always been. The couple regularly exchanged toxic abuses in anger. Their home then became a theater of the absurd. Truth be told, a lot of men hardly listen to their spouses. If they do, they will successfully avoid some self-inflicted setbacks. But on the other hand, some women do not communicate effectively with their spouses or partners, as they often coach their words with provocative innuendos that provoke their spouses. For some women, all they desire in a relationship is money, money, and money. They would rather not be part of their spouse's challenges. Listen, men who physically abuse their spouses are despicable and shameless boneheads. Such men should be flogged in public to serve as a deterrent. Such barbaric acts should be left to wild animals. There is certainly no level of provocation that justifies such a preposterous, depraved, and animalistic attitude. But on the other hand, women or wives should purge their tongues of provocative invectives or laser-guided insults. A lady once said that the power of every woman is in her mouth. True indeed. So, women should positively use the power of their mouths to dialogue, to build, to create, to mend, and to inspire. The power of the mouth should not be abused or used to tear down, to depress, to weaken, to destroy, to provoke, or invoke the demons in the department of rage, violence, and destruction. Words are undoubtedly very powerful seeds, so be mindful of your words. Remember the saying that a soft answer turns away anger. It is terrible for anyone, male or female, husband or wife, to abuse the mouth by using it for unscrupulous purposes. Men and women sometimes seem to come from different planets, but women are more intricate. These days, some women no longer weaponize their mouths. They have become more subtle, as they do not want to be accused of verbally assaulting their spouses. Instead, they use body language and provocative gestures to communicate their resentment, rebellion, and anger. Many marriages are presently experiencing marital hurricane. Not a few marriages have been buried in the rubble caused by rage, toxic words, and the like. How many married couples remember their marital vows when they get encircled by the pressures of life? One tragedy decomposing the foundation of many marriages is the calamity of divided vision, which ultimately ushers in division. This is a state wherein couples develop and maintain opposite family goals, which is an unfortunate travesty. In many cases, some husbands are fortunate to have good wives, whom they usually express affection and commitment to, particularly when things are tough for them. But when such men or husbands achieve some level of financial success, that is when they suddenly realize that their wives were either too fat, too untidy, not educated, or accuse them of having body odor. When such husbands attain a level of financial success, their attitude suddenly change, and their wives or spouses begin to irritate them. They become very arrogant and unreasonably narcissistic. In fact, the mere sight of their wives seems to annoy them, and they begin to scheme ways to stay away from home, which usually leads some of them to the cesspit of infidelity, subtly covered by the web of lust. The breakdown in communication between married couples or committed partners is a dangerous bug and a major cause of acrimony that can exacerbate the decay and disintegration of many marriages or relationships. Several of such marriages end up in divorce courts. A few years ago, a lady found it very difficult to greet her husband in spite of several counseling that she had gotten over the years. Malice became her dearest companion. It was her husband who would usually greet her. And when her husband became fed up with her arrogant attitude, tension gradually crept in. And before long, the twin demons of strife and malice became the unseen guest in their home and the silent listener to their conversations. Attitude is a major key to success or failure, as it can make or mar any individual or couple. You see, every level of communication in marriage is vital and must never be trivialized, not even the mere exchange of pleasantries and greetings. It is therefore important to resist bitterness and malice, as they steal the joy and strength of every marriage. They hinder progress in many homes. They are subtle, destructive enemies. Do you know that for some people, even when their spouses fall sick or celebrate a remarkable milestone achievement in their lives, they callously keep their distance? Malice eventually graduates into bitterness. It is true that harboring bitterness is akin to drinking a glass of poison. So, why would anyone desire or attempt to drink from the poisonous cup of bitterness and malice? Countless marriages have expired, and that is really the reason for a myriad of troubled marriages and divorce cases. Malice and bitterness mentor many people in the acts of wickedness. Isn't it deplorable that couples who express so much affection for one another, get passionately intimate and share things together, suddenly become hateful, cruel, mischievous and wicked, sometimes for weeks, months, and even for several years? There are numerous couples who don't speak to one another even in the presence of their children, relatives, and friends. This even includes very religious couples and religious leaders. Some of them go to church together, sit together during church services, but still do not speak to one another. And when the preacher says, Welcome your neighbor and tell him or her to be expectant today. Such couples look for their neighbors behind them and still refuse to speak to their spouses next to them. Even in the church, such hypocrisy is like the sacrifice of the biblical Cain that was rejected by God. Now, on a lighter note, there is a joke about a couple who expectedly sat together in church every Sunday. After preaching, the guest speaker called on all widows present to stand up for special prayers. Then, a lady who was seated next to her husband suddenly stood up. Her husband, feeling very embarrassed and thinking that his wife did not understand the preacher's call, tried to pull her down to her seat, telling her that the call was for widows only. But the wife retorted angrily and asked her husband if she was better than all the widows who were standing up for prayers. She warned her husband not to be a hindrance to her breakthrough. Indeed, it is not every married woman that is a wife. A man can be married to a very mean, heartless, insensitive, greedy, narcissistic Jezebel who is a liability to his life. But likewise, it is not every married man that is a husband. A woman can be married to an irresponsible, hopeless, promiscuous, shameless, and unambitious nonentity of a man. Couples who live in malice and bitterness have obviously eaten the bread of arrogance buttered with resentment. Arrogance and resentment are baked in the oven of frustration. Malice, bitterness, and arrogance achieve only one purpose, and that is misery. Friends, always remember this. Arrogance and bitterness can only produce toxic results. You know, marriage is a very complex institution. It is more or less a boisterous and turbulent voyage for many. Countless marriages today are decomposing rapidly, while some are in a state of coma. Many marriages crash on a daily basis. It is for this reason that the school of thought highly recommends that marriages should be a renewable short-term contract, so that if a couple enters into a 2 years or 5 years renewable marriage contract, if things go all the way down the line, they will have the option of not renewing such a contract further if they so desire. That could wittingly reduce the escalating predominant rate of divorce cases the world over. An ancient proverb says that when salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? Listen, everyone who sets what is called realistic and achievable goals does so based on what they perceive they can achieve. But more often than not, they are oblivious of the truism that they are mere prisoners in the penitentiary of mediocrity. It takes a lot of courage to dream big. It also takes a lot of courage to break out of that prison called mediocrity. For centuries, women were and are still discriminated against. Many women are still being marginalized, particularly in developing countries of the world. There are many societies presently wherein women are not allowed education or inheritance rights. Lots of women are treated like subhumans, sex toys, or baby factories. Not a few women are denied access to credit facilities or employment opportunities. Many women are crassly underpaid in comparison to their male counterparts. This undoubtedly enhances poverty and underdevelopment in many societies. It is a fact that women invest more of their resources in their families and communities. It is also true that countries with larger gender equality have lower poverty rates than others. Women empowerment is one sure way to eradicate poverty and underdevelopment. Women are more at the receiving end during economic crisis. In many families, when the need to manage available finances arises, many parents would rather opt to educate their male children instead of their female children. Countless women are relegated to petty trading businesses and are considered incompetent for business opportunities. But sadly, this trend is more predominant in African countries where the level of infant and child mortality is astronomical. This dangerous trend is often caused by poverty, which is directly linked to lack of women empowerment. Many women and children suffer grievously from the brutal scourge of poverty. It is estimated that over 50,000 people, mostly women and children, perish world over as a direct result of poverty. Whenever inflation or recession sets in any country, it is women that mainly suffer the brunt of such economic downturns. Children from very poor homes suffer and perish more from sickness and diseases like asthma, malaria, and pneumonia just because they cannot afford proper Medicare. It is heartrending to see little children on the streets begging commuters for money to get something to eat. Poverty enhances homelessness and criminal activities. You see, women in developing countries are vulnerable victims of discrimination and marginalization. It is indeed heartrending, and that is why we advocate for women capital development. Yes, indeed, it is time for women to arise. It is time for women to stand up against discrimination. It is time for women to resist marginalization. It is time for women to take their destinies in their hands. Enough of self-pity and complacency. It is time for women to empower others. It is time for women to dominate their sphere of influence. Presently, through economic, education, and political empowerment, women can dominate the oil and gas sector of any economy. Women can take the lead in the manufacturing sector. Indeed, women can govern the workplace. The place of a woman is no longer in the kitchen or in the bedroom. That antiquated ideology is insulting and is fast becoming obsolete and outlandish. Women are now taking over boardrooms. This is a time that women can run and lead the banking sector, the health sector, science and technology, sports, agriculture, housing, environment, the judiciary, and other sectors of any economy. Women empowerment is one major way to enhance economic development in any nation. Let us look forward to the day when the national soccer coaches in several countries will be women. A time when presidents of developed and developing countries will be women, just like Mexico's first female president, Claudia Sheinbaum. Even as great as the United States of America is, the USA has never produced a female president. In Nigeria, for instance, with the advent of the local content policy, women have ventured into the risk-taking business ocean hitherto dominated by their male counterparts. Women now own oil and gas fields, oil rigs, vessels, trucks, and so on. Women are wonderful agents of change and progress. Howbeit, unempowered women are prone to discrimination, painful servitude, and domestic violence. But not a few women have taken the bull by the horn to become superachievers. Women like Angela Merkel, a former Chancellor of Germany, Dilma Rousseff, a former President of Brazil, Park Geun-hye, a former President of South Korea, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, a former President of Argentina, Joyce Banda, a former President of Liberia. There are other renowned super-achieving women who have carved a niche for themselves, such as Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, Oprah Winfrey, Michelle Obama, Madonna, Taylor Swift, Rihanna, Beyonce, Karen Lynch, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Folorunsho Alakija, and many more. Now, according to 2024 Forbes magazine reports, there are currently 2,781 billionaires in the world, and 369 of them are women. Françoise Bettencourt Myers is the wealthiest woman on planet Earth with a whopping net worth of about $99.5 billion. She is followed by Alice Walton, the daughter of Sam Walton, who was the founder of Walmart. Her net worth is currently $72.3 billion. It is true that money is not the most important thing on earth, but undoubtedly, money is extremely impactful because money answereth all bills. You can see from the foregoing profile that financial success is no respecter of gender. It is therefore erroneous and incongruous for people to insinuate that successful women achieve success by trading sex for money or favor. That is a nauseating insult to womanhood. There are several women entrepreneurs the world over who have achieved remarkable successes in various aspects of their lives. Women the world over are turning fear and complacency into extraordinary success. Achieving your goals as a woman does not have to depend on a man's supplies. Lots of women are oblivious of the truism that they possess the potential to achieve their goals and aspirations without any man's personal support. Besides, on a lighter note, there is a myth that states, behind every great and successful man, there is a woman. No one knows the origin of this popular myth, but if there's any element of truth therein, then you would indeed agree that women undoubtedly have the seed of greatness embedded in them.